This is Brett Latham, and we're talking about AP Economics. Today, we're going to talk about Krugman's Module 46, income effects, substitution effects, and especially elasticity. Okay, first thing we want you to get down is the substitution effect and the income effect. Okay, the substitution effect says as the price of one item gets more expensive, we tend to buy other items, because if you think about it, every item we buy, we like, we wanted it, but as it becomes more expensive, it's not quite as attractive to us per dollar. Okay, that's talking about the substitution effect. Okay, the income effect is a little different in that as something gets more expensive, it takes up more of your income, and it's like, you know, this is using up a lot of my income. Now, the income effect is much more prevalent for more expensive items like rent, housing, cars, things like that. Like, for instance, a Lamborghini would take up a whole lot of my income, whereas, you know, a small Toyota might not be so bad. But that's the income effect. So it's comparing it to your income, whereas the substitution effect is just talking about the different items you buy. So make sure you have those two down. Okay, defining and measuring elasticity. So the next thing and what we're going to focus on mostly here is elasticity. So we know from the law of demand, if we increase the price, the quantity demanded decreases. The question is, how much? Okay, so the price of gas goes up. What will happen to demand? It's going to decrease. How much is it going to decrease? Well, elasticity measures that. Okay, will gas stations go out of business? Probably not, right? Will consumers completely stop driving to school, work, in the shopping mall? I don't think they will. Do you? Right? We'll do that. We'll deal with that. But it's like, how much does it change? Okay, so we've got the law of demand. We've talked about that. Okay, so we're going to measure the degree of responsiveness of an item. That's what we talk about elasticity. Okay, and so right here, if consumers are relatively responsive, okay, then demand is elastic. In other words, when you change the price, I change my behavior quite a bit. That's elastic. Then if I'm relatively unresponsive, well, that's inelastic. Okay? Inelastic, relatively unresponsive. For instance, if I like eggs and eggs go from $2 to $2.50 or even $3 a dozen, I'm probably still buying eggs in about the same amount, maybe a little less, but about the same amount. Whereas other items, if they got more expensive, I might buy substantially less. Okay? In both cases, we respond based on the law of demand. What's different is how much do we respond? Do we respond a lot or a little? And that's what we're talking about now. Okay? So to calculate the price elasticity of demand, you need to write this down. This is really important. Okay? It's the percent change in quantity. And by the way, that's always on top. The percent change in quantity divided by the percent change in price. That's that equation right there. But percent change in quantity over percent change, delta means change, in price. You need to know that. So here we go. We've got the price of digital cameras increases by 10%. The quantity demanded falls by 20%. Okay? So the percent change in quantity, 20%, divided by the percent change in price, 10%, gives us -2, or we actually just call it 2, because since it's always going to go down, it has to be negative. So we're good there. And so we just say 2. Economists ignore it. Now, 2, anything greater than 1 is elastic. In other words, consumers respond to it more significantly when you increase the price. Another example, the price of milk increases by 10%, the quantity falls by 5%. Okay, you think about it, if you drink milk, you got to have milk, right? Even if the price changes, you're probably still going to buy it. Okay, so here, when the price increases by 10%, the quantity demanded only falls by 5%. So once again, quantity on top, so the 5% divided by 10%, 5 divided by 10, 1/2, that's less than 1. Okay, that ratio is less than 1, therefore it's inelastic, indicating it's like, hey, when you raise the price, I'm mostly still going to buy it. I might buy a little less, but not a lot less. Okay, so that's referred to as inelastic. So there's two examples. Greater than 1, elastic. So greater than 1, elastic. And less than 1, inelastic, right? Make sure you have that down. Greater than 1, elastic. Less than 1, inelastic. Okay, so let's do this one real quick. Okay, price of donuts rises from $1 to $1.15. Okay, in order to calculate the percent change in price, okay, well, it changed by 15 cents. So that's 0.15. Where did it begin? Okay, well, it began at $1. 1.5 divided by 1 equals 0.15. Okay, so it's the percent change in price, and to get percent change in price, it's the change. So percent change equals the change divided by where you begin. Okay, percent change is the change divided by where you begin. Okay, we need to do the same thing for quantity. Well, how much did it change by? 1. Where did it start? 20. 1 divided by 20 equals 0.05. 0.05. Okay, change is, quantity is always on top. So the 0.05, that's the change in quantity, divided by the percent change in price, 0.15, that equals 1/3, right? 5 divided by 15 equals 1/3. Less than 1, inelastic. Not surprisingly, donuts are inelastic. If you like donuts, you want them. And since they're pretty cheap, you know, it's like, hey, that's a 15% price increase. It's only 15 cents. So you still go ahead and buy that. Okay, so there's another example. Okay, now, one more thing. We're going to talk about this a little later, so we're not going to worry about it too much today, but there's called a total revenue test. Okay, and what it means, what it tells you is if both the price and your total revenue increase, then it's inelastic, or if the price of the total revenue decreases, it's inelastic. So if they both increase, they both decrease, inelastic. In this case, we have an item. If we increase the price from 20 to 21, okay, so the price goes from 20 to 21, okay, the quantity goes from 10 to 9.9. Well, in order to get total revenue, we take the price times how many people purchase, 9.9, and that could be 99,000, that could be 9,900, doesn't matter, just 9.9. Okay, we get 208,000. And previously we had $20 at 10 is 200. Well, we increased the price from 20 to 21. What happened to total revenue? Total revenue increased from 200 to 208. So price increases, total revenue increases. That's inelastic. If they go in opposite directions, then it's elastic. So that's another test, and like I said, we're going to get that in the next couple of modules, and so we'll get to it soon. Okay, I want to give you just some examples of, and this is right out of your book, okay, your Krugman book, but inelastic demand, things that when the price changes, we don't react a whole lot. Eggs, really low, right? They could double the price of eggs, we'd still buy a lot of them. Beef, not quite like eggs, but we still buy more beef. So if they raise the price, we buy more. Stationery. Stationery is a weird thing, but think about it. If you buy stationery, it doesn't cost that much. You want to send thank you notes, stuff like that, which is great. You're going to still buy it. And then gasoline, not surprisingly, we only react so much to gasoline. We try to drive less, but we're still going to school or work or whatever. Things that are elastic, housing. Why is housing elastic? We have to have housing because you can live in cheaper housing. And it's so expensive. This takes up a lot of your income. That's an income effect. Restaurant meals. What happens when they raise the price of a restaurant meal? Well, you can eat at home, or you can go to a different restaurant or a different type of restaurant. So that's pretty elastic. Airline travel, once again, very expensive. And what can you do instead of flying? Well, you could drive. And then foreign travel is really expensive. What can you do instead of flying to Europe? Well, you can just decide not to go to Europe. You can go someplace else, right? So those two, because they're so expensive, more elastic than inelastic. Okay, a couple of things here, and you may have a hard time seeing these, and so I'm going to write them, so don't worry about it too much. We want to get these 4 things down. Okay, so this is elasticity of demand. And by the way, this is out of the Morton series, so it's really good. Hopefully your teacher, and your teacher, if it's me, is using Morton, and you'll see these things. The elasticity of demand, so you notice we do that kind of curvy E. Elasticity of demand equals the percent change in quantity over percent change in price. Okay. Income elasticity. This is income elasticity of demand. Once again, percent change in quantity. Notice quantity is always on top. Over percent change in income. Okay, so write income. Okay. Elasticity of supply. Percent change in quantity. Okay, so once again, percent change in quantity. And what do you think? It's percent change in price again, right? Just like demand, percent change in price. Okay, and the last thing is labor supply, not as important. I'll just tell you, once again, it's percent change in quantity. Quantity of what? Quantity of labor, okay, over percent change. What's the price of labor? What's wages? So percent change in wages. You probably won't see that one on the AP exam, but just mention it. Okay, I keep trying to hit my button to turn the page. I don't have to do that. Okay, things we want to make sure you got written down. Okay, if your relationship is greater, when you do your calculations, if it's greater than 1, elastic. If it's less than 1, inelastic. You have to know this. What if it's exactly 1? Well, then it's unit elastic. So exactly 1 is unit elastic. So also a good thing to know, that's the type of thing that they do. All 3 of these are likely, at least 1 of the 3, maybe 2 of the 3, are likely to appear on the AP exam. So you want to know this. I'm dancing here. I'll get used to it, okay? It's just practice. Okay, so let's do some practice questions real quick. Which of the following statements is true? When a good absorbs only a small share of consumer spending, the income effect explains the demand curve's negative slope. So true or false? A change in consumption brought about by a change in purchasing power describes the income effect. In the case of an inferior good, the income and substitution effects work in opposite directions. Okay? Pause the video and answer true, false on all 3, and then decide which one of A through E is correct. Okay, so you're back. Okay, a good absorbs only a small share of your consumer spending. Income effect explains. No, it doesn't. Okay, the income effect is for expensive items. A change in consumption brought about by a change in purchasing power describes the income effect. Yes, right? It affects my ability to purchase. If everything was more expensive, I would purchase yet more. So that's true. So we just eliminated that, and that. So it's either 2 or 2 and 3. In the case of an inferior good, okay, so let's take ramen noodles, okay, I make more money. What happens is what's the income effect do? Well, I'd be more able to afford ramen noodles. I'd be more likely to buy them. The substitution effect, I'm sorry. I'm gonna back up, okay. The income effect says I have more money, okay, but what are ramen noodles? Well, they're inferior goods, so I'm less likely to buy them. The substitution effect would be if I have more money, I'm more likely to substitute other goods. No, so they do work in opposite directions. So your answer is 2 and 3. They're both true. Okay, moving on, and there I go again. We'll get used to it. The income effect is most likely to come into play for which of the following goods? So which one's the income effect? And we just talked about it. So you ought to be good. Pause the video. Okay. Well, cheap, relatively cheaper housing, right? We said specifically housing is elastic. Why is it elastic? Because it's so expensive. Number 3, if the decrease in price from $2 to $1 causes an increase in the quantity demanded from 100 to 120 using the midpoint method. Okay, we're going to calculate the midpoint method, and we're going to use it doing it right here. What the midpoint method says is instead of starting at the beginning, normally, remember, it was percent change in quantity, okay, over where we begin, right? Percent over where we begin, or the change divided by where we begin. Instead of where we begin, it's going to be the average. Okay, so we went from $1 to $2. Okay, well, that's $1. So our change is $1. Where did we begin? When we began at $1, the midpoint method says don't begin at $1, use the middle. What's the average of these two? It's $1.50. Okay, over 150, and that's 0.67. Okay, so there's our price difference. Okay, same thing for quantity. How much did it change by? Well, it changed by 20. Right up here, changed by 20. Okay, divide that not by where we started, which would be 100, but by the average of those two. So 100 divided by 120 is 110. Okay, so 20 over 110 comes out to about 0.18. 0.18. Whoops, I'm at the end. 0.18. You got it. 0.18. Okay, that's my quantity. That's my price. So 0.18 divided by 0.67 turns out to come out to right there, be 0.27. So you can see it's a lot, the midpoint's a lot like our other method. The only difference in the midpoint is instead of using where do we start at, the $1, we take the average of that, $1.50, we take the average of that, 110, and we divide our change by the average instead of the change by where we begin. And so if we look there, there's our final calculation. Yep, 18 divided by 66.67 comes out to 0.27, which gives us B. Okay, question number 4. Which of the following is likely to have the highest price elasticity of demand? Okay, if it's price elasticity highest, that means you're very elastic. Which one of these is most elastic? Well, we already covered that, right? Pause the video. And it's foreign. How about that one? It's foreign travel. Okay, it's foreign travel. Hopefully you remember that. And why? Because generally speaking, we don't have to go to Europe. We want to go to Europe, but let's say it's going to cost us $5,000. All of a sudden the cost goes up to $7,000. It's like, my goodness, that starts becoming a lot of money, especially if it's per person and you got like 6 people in your family or something like that. So that kind of thing. Okay, we've got one more to go, I think. Okay, if a 2% change in the price of a good leads to a 10% change in the quantity, what's the value of the price elasticity of demand? Pause the video. You should be able to do this calculation. It's important that you do. All right, here we go. So price, 2%. Well, remember, quantity is always on top. So 10 up here, price 2, that comes out to 5. Now, bonus question, elastic or inelastic? And the answer is elastic, right? It's elastic because it's greater than 1. 5's greater than 1. Okay, so that's our introduction to elasticity, and we'll be talking about it for a couple more modules here. And then after that, some too. So that's it for today. So long for Mr. Latham. See you next time.